Okay, we're going to take a look at the game Task Force, Naval Tactics and Operations in the 1980s. And the game was designed in 1981 by Joe Balkowski, published by SPI, now long out of print. Now at the time, because it was designed in 1981, you could say it was kind of the state-of-the-art naval game for modern naval combat. And what we're going to do is look at the board, the pieces, some of the charts, give you an idea what this game was all about. Now the game comes with actually 3 maps, and these represent the potential trouble areas in the 1980s. So you've got the famous Greenland-Iceland map here, Iceland, Faroe Islands, and the Shetlands, a potential conflict area in the 1980s, and even today. Map B was kind of a Caribbean one. You've got Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, and Colombia here. And this one large map was, of course, the Mediterranean. Crete, Cyprus, Libya, Egypt. Okay? So you've got one complete map sheet with 3 maps on it. But the game actually came with 2 copies of the map, as you can see. 2 complete copies of the same map. Now why? Well, a lot of you may know this already, that modern naval combat is all about stealth, hide and seek, and hitting the other guy before he even knows you're there. So when you play the game, your opponent is actually going to have his map like this, and you will have yours like so. Now you will need some player aids. I had to make kind of a screen up, so I've come up with this kind of thing, where you put the screen in front, and of course your opponent will play here and you will play here, so you'll have no idea what's going on in the other map. And that's kind of cool, because that is what modern naval combat is all about. Stealth, searching for the enemy. So I'm going to set up just kind of a map scenario, and we'll take a look at the pieces and give you an idea of how the game plays. Okay, I should point out one thing that's a little awkward if you go to play a smaller scenario. Let's say, for example, you wanted to play just on the Shetland or the Greenland-Iceland map. Now you could fold the map, of course, up and make it smaller, no problem there, okay, and then put your screen up. The trouble with that is SPI wasn't thinking ahead for that. They've left the game turn record here on the side and the action sequence. Now you can make up your own, I suppose, that's no big deal, but it's a little bit of a messy game to set up in a practical sense. So what I'm going to do is set up the Greenland-Iceland map and show you kind of how the game would work. So your opponent would fold his map up too. Although, like I said, one of you is going to need the game turn record track and the action track. So maybe for the sake of this video, I'll just show it like this. So those are little problematical things, but that's just something you have to live with. It's a creature of the 1980s, and that's just kind of the way games were designed back then. Now, for the purposes of the video, I'm going to show just one side. Of course, your opponent would be on the other side of the table with similar map and similar charts over here. But for the video, we won't bother showing that. So, again, this is the Faroes Iceland map. Over here is your group display, where you would put your task force markers on. Submarin means submarine forces, and your air base display. So the counters and stuff would go on here, except for the task force markers, which would be on this board here. And over here is your tactical display. So when forces meet on the large board and fight it out, they then go to the tactical display and fight out the tactics. And we'll show those individually. But I'll first show you how the task forces work and how they work on the strategic board. Okay, below is an example of how a task force might be set up. For example, we have task force number 1 here in this megahex number 28, and task force number 8 in megahex 27. These hexes, which compose 6 hexes within, are called megahexes. And that's the way the search procedure works. You'll be searching megahexes, and then depending on the quality of the electronics, you'll be able to locate and get accurate or inaccurate information on enemy forces. You have to remember that your opponent has a similar board and he doesn't know where your forces are. Now the group display shows you what's inside the task forces. For example, task force number 1 consists of the destroyers Peterson and Huron. And task force number 8, in this example, consists of the carrier Nimitz and 4 guided missile cruisers, Sims, Biddle, California, and South Carolina. So that's how the group displays relate to the task forces. Now the task forces generally can be in 2 modes. Normal mode means they're using their active surface radars, sonars, etc. Or the other side is called MCON, which means they're exercising emission control. It means they're not actively pinging, not actively using their sonars, radars, and will be much harder to detect. So that's how the task force markers move on the task force board. Generally, the task forces move 1 or 2 of the smaller hexes in the game. Okay? So that's generally how that works. Now generally, each turn, players will be calling out, if they want, the megahex areas that they're searching. And as a reminder, you can use these little track markers to remind yourself which ones you've called out to see if there are enemy forces there. This kind of reminds me of the old Avalon Hill Midway game designed in '64, although this is much more sophisticated because you just don't call out areas and then the fellow answers whether he's in it or not. You use the capabilities of the vessels in the task force against various modifiers that the other fellow has to produce a result and a die roll to see if he's found or not. And it isn't a black and white kind of thing. If you find the fellow, he just doesn't say, yeah, you found me, you found a carrier and 5 guided missile cruisers. Depending on the die roll range, he will give you accurate information, misinformation, or no information. So there's various levels of intelligence that's going on the strategic map. But in essence, just like in carrier warfare of World War II, you want to find the enemy before he finds you. And you also want to throw everything you've got at him when you do find him. Now, if there is a battle, you then go to this tactical display. And I'll explain a little bit about how that works. Now, when you do go to the tactical map, what's going to matter is the position of the ships in the various rings. And that's where the game gets kind of neat. Again, I won't go into detail, I'm trying to give you an overall view of what the game is generally like. But for example, if you had Harpoon missiles coming in here, in Area 4, we'll say, the California guided missile cruiser would try to knock some of these Harpoon missiles out before they penetrated to the inner defense of the carrier. So you've got a whole tactical system going on here based on the strategic situation over here. And so the placement of your screening vessels is going to be important. How many Harpoon missiles he's firing is going to be important. And quite frankly, a die roll is going to be important. And the capabilities of the ships, because each of these ships, with their numbers, has various values. Now I forgot to mention that these ships here have two sides to them. This value just gives their general characteristics, their flotation value, and whether they have anti-submarine capability. The other side is their sort of hardcore data when you're fighting the tactical battle. And I'll just refer to the chart here to see what these values are. Maybe I can zoom in a bit better to show you what the counters are like. Okay, the values on the counters themselves. Now let's take a look at the guided missile cruiser Sims, for example. Now the first figure represents its anti-submarine value. Okay. The second figure is its anti-aircraft value. The third figure is its gunnery value, if it gets into gunnery combat with another surface unit. The fourth figure is its jamming value, its ability to screw up enemy missiles. And the last value is its surface-to-surface missile value. So all these numbers will mean something, of course, in the tactical game. Now, for example, the Nimitz here doesn't have a lot of capability for ASW, in fact 0, and virtually nothing for gunnery value. Carriers rely on their air defense to protect them. Now the missiles, this happens to be a Gabriel missile, and those are SSN 11s. They have various values. Now the first figure is the range that the missile has, and the second figure is the accuracy. I believe the higher figure is better for accuracy, but don't quote me on that. I'd have to check that up. I suspect it is. The Exocet missile, you can see, has a 4 with an asterisk, and the SSN 7 has a 3. So all of these numbers, of course, make a difference in the tactical battle here on the tactical display. Now, modern ships can't take a lot of damage. You really, if you hit the guy first, you've got a huge advantage. You don't really have to even sink a vessel these days. You just have to knock out its electronics, knock out its ability to hurt you, and you've virtually knocked them out. So modern combat is quite different than World War II surface combat. Now the game comes with a lot of counters, which is really cool. You've got quite a lot of different scenarios in the game. You've got patrol craft, destroyers, guided missile frigates, you've got submarines, you've got freighters, carriers. So all of the ships from modern navies that we're used to are included in the game, and different nationalities. So you get NATO units, Soviet units. It's quite comprehensive, and there's quite a lot of scenarios in the game too. Now there's about 23 pages of rules, but about 4 or 5 of those is just the scenarios themselves. And the scenarios are graduated, so you can start off with some very simple scenarios with a few missile boats between the Israelis and the Syrians, and then advance through the Yom Kippur War. There's some Guantanamo rescue scenarios. So you don't have to use all the rules to get to know the game. I'm still learning the game. I have not tried the advanced game rules. These introduce a lot of air rules to the game. Now, of course, in any modern naval game, you've got to have air. But the introductory scenarios concern mainly missile boats, destroyers, and they assume perhaps cloud cover or something where they can't get air into the mix. And I recommend those for starting. I'm kind of into naval combat, and I certainly like the game. There's lots of good illustrations showing you how the tactical display works. The rules are fairly comprehensive using SPI's standard case system. So I'm still getting to learn the game, and I like what I see. Now over on Board Game Geek, one fellow has made some nice task force quick reference cards in color too, and this is of great help. So I'm looking forward to playing this game, and all I wanted to do is give you just a quick review of what the game is about. I can't possibly, in a short video, tell you all the nuances of the game. I'm still exploring it. I'm anxious to actually play a game. But I thought it'd be nice to look at an old classic from the 80s. Task Force by Joe Balkowski. So if you get your hands on it, you might want to give it a try. So long for now.